In the late 1980s, Nintendo's library was overflowing with platformers. Mario was king, Metroid was mysterious, and Zelda had already changed the rules. But tucked quietly into that golden era was a game that didn't quite fit anywhere. And maybe because it tried to fit everywhere. So it had side-scrolling shooting, overhead exploration, vehicle combat, underground dungeons, and a soundtrack that slapped harder than a metal concert in 8-bit. Its name? Blaster Master. And while it never reached Mario level of fame, it did become one of the most ambitious and beloved cult classics on the NES. A game that dared to mash up genres long before the word Metrovania even existed. This is the story of Blaster Master, the hybrid adventure that refused to stay in one lane. So let's talk about a frog, a tank, and a legend. Now, if you've never heard this story before, it sounds absolutely wild, but stay with me. The American version opens up with a kid named Jason chasing his pet frog, Fred, yes, the frog is named Fred, down a radioactive hole. And then he finds a tank, yes, a full-on battle tank, and uses it to save his frog, and the world if you will. Crazy as it sounds, in my mind is pure 80s logic, and I love it. But that story? Total invention of Sunsoft of America. See, the Japanese version, Cho Wokosei Senkai Metafight, was completely different. It was about an intergalactic war between the forces of Sophia and the Invim Dark Star Army. When Sunset brought it to the West, they scrapped the whole anime-style space opera and gave us radioactive frogs. Because, why not? This was the 80s, and anything went back in those days. Now, Sunsoft, the developer behind Blaster Master, was one of those quiet Japanese studios that kept surprising people. Before Blaster Master, they were known mostly for arcade ports and oddities, games like Spy Hunters, Atlantis no Naso, and a few movie tie-ins. But around 1987, they began pushing the NES hardware harder than almost anyone else, and their secret weapon? A team of engineers obsessed with sound and sprite performance. Sunset's own audio driver, written by Nakio Kodaka and his sound team, gave their game such a signature punch. Deep bass tones, clean melodies, and those crunchy percussion hits that somehow made the NES sound like a full drum kit. And you can hear it clearly in Blaster Master's opening level. I mean, the music builds like a battle anthem, all hope and adventure, and it sets the tone for the entire game. And I'm gonna say this right now, and I'll say, in my mind, I feel like Blaster Master is probably some of the best music you can find on the NES. I mean, it starts off when you go to the bottom, once you go down that well or whatever, that hole in the backyard. I mean, once you see your tank, you get it, and it starts off with the opening mysterious music, and then it picks up and just lets you know you're on an adventure, and I feel like that just tells the story, and the music only gets better as you progress through the game. So yeah, hats off to them for the soundtrack for this game. Matter of fact, let's take a listen to one of the tracks now. Yeah, that one probably being one of my favorites, so let's continue. So what made Blaster Master so unique wasn't just its tank, it was how it seamlessly blended two entirely different gameplay styles. One hand, you piloted the tank, Sophia the Third, and that just sounds sexy, your vehicle, Sophia the Third, through massive interconnected side-scrolling environments. You had jumping, blasting, exploring, until you reached the cave. And then you'd hop out, but you could hop out at any time, guys. But then you'd hop out and then suddenly the game transformed into an overhead shooter. And each area felt alive in the game. It was sprawling, dangerous, and full of secrets you had to explore. And then the upgrades. You'd find hover upgrades, new weapons, and a sense of, wait, how far does this game actually go? Because it kept players hooked. It was one of the first times an NES game felt like a real world instead of just a series of disconnected levels. And I gotta say, this game, for back in the day, I feel like it did something magical. And what I mean by that is, I think it was basically a 2-in-1 kind of game. Okay, so first you have the, it would have been fine either way. That's how good this game was. You could either have the vehicle mode where you're in the Sophia the Third. Yes, I just love saying that. And then, you know, because it played like a full-scale game. You could actually get away with this just being a vehicle platformer game, and it had enough depth. But then, and then it even like blended the two together, where when you got out the mech, you can actually, or I won't say mech, but when you got out the vehicle, you could actually be in your human form, but you're real small, but you still had legit moves. You could jump, you had you could shoot and everything, you could squat down, you could swim, you could do all these things in that form. But then when you went into the cave, instead of being lazy and keeping it in that small form, they actually blew the big picture up and it looked amazing. So you could have been fine going the vehicle route platformer, you could have been fine with the little guy running around and been just fine, or where it blows up the graphics when you go into one of the caves or something like that, when you're out your vehicle to fight the boss, you could have been okay with that. But it merged all three seamlessly, and to me, and even to this day, you rarely find it. In most games, you look one way, your sprites, you look that way the whole throughout the game. Maybe a one part where you get smaller, but this one seamlessly did all three and none of it felt weird and it all gelled together. That, my friends, is a huge accomplishment. And I think that's what, turned people's heads with this game. That's just my opinion, And every boss fight had personality as well. I mean, they weren't just enemies, they were actually events. And because Blaster Master didn't have a password system at the time, beating all 8 areas in one sitting was actually a badge of honor. And it wasn't for the faint of heart either, but it rewarded those who mastered the game, or more so memorized the game and what to do. But yeah, it was kind of challenging, but not impossible. So let's talk about the challenge, the legacy, and the mystery. Now, when Blaster Master hit North America in late 1988, it was met with glowing reviews, tight controls, incredible visuals, and killer music. But there was one problem. There was no save feature, and players had to memorize layouts and perfect their runs. And for kids back then, honestly, that was half the fun. And if you struggled, kind of half the pain. So over time though, Blaster Master became one of those whispered classics. A game everyone respected, but few actually finished. And moving forward, it inspired sequels on the Game Boy, PlayStation, and even a full reimagining decades later with Blaster Master Zero from Inti Creates, a modern love letter that revived the series for a few generations. And you know what's crazy about this game? I mean, Blaster Master back in the day, for me anyway, it was so ahead of its time that I really didn't know where to place it. I mean, did you call it a platformer? Did you call it a underground explorer? I mean, you couldn't really slap a title on this game. You just said Blaster Master, and if people played the game, they knew what you were talking about. Because in a sense, it was just too deep to be called a shooter, and too technical to be called a platformer, and too open to be fit in one little box. So yeah, sound familiar? That's what we call nowadays, guys, a Metroidvania. But it was no Metroidvania back then. But people sleep on Blaster Master. They kind of forget that. But yeah, this was part of that forming. You had Metroid, of course, and Castlevania 2, but this was part of that forming. I had to say, you have to mention this game if you're talking about the origin of Metroidvania, because that's what it did. You kind of did. In some ways, it even brought more to the table, because Metroidvania, even with Metroid and Castlevania 2, you're the same, you have the same role every time in your incarnations. But this one, like I said earlier, you had 3 different ways you could tackle this game. So yeah, it was definitely a pioneer of the Metroidvania that we know and love today. So in a decade defined by mascots and side-scrollers, Blaster Master stood apart. And it was messy in some spots, it wasn't perfect, but ambitious and way ahead of its time, like we talked about earlier. And it asked players to think, explore, and master both man and machine. So Sunsoft's little hybrid became a blueprint for something much bigger, proof that the NES could handle complex ideas if you had the imagination to push it. And while Blaster Master never got the spotlight it deserved back then, it quietly influenced everything from Metroid Fusion to even games like are a little more modern, like Shovel Knight. And they didn't build this game for the fame. It was built for the fun, and that's rare nowadays. It was built for the fun, the challenge, and the players who wanted something different at the time. So what I think about Blaster Master? This game slaps, even to this day. I just played through this one. Haven't touched it in a while, but I just played through it. And guys, I'm gonna say, for me, I feel like you could take this game here, right? Blaster Master. Lots of times you got these new, 8-bit indie games, and they are a blast to play. I mean, just a lot of fun. But you could probably take this game, take the name off of it, and slap it into today's modern society, and I bet you this game would take off as far as indie games. It would probably win some awards, because this one was really good. I mean, the things it did well, like I said earlier, it was able to balance those 3 aspects that could easily be their own game: the vehicle platforming, the little guy when you get out the vehicle, and then actually when you're in the dungeons running around full force, full size. I mean, kudos to them for not being lazy and just keeping that small form. Also, people don't understand the design. This thing was cool enough to where you had backtracking elements like a Metroidvania game, and also just playing the game. The controls were tight, it felt good, and then even the enemies. I mean, you had to where and we didn't even talk about the upgrade system with the the Sophia the Third. I mean, that thing, you upgrade all these things, and you kind of like get a piece, kind of like an RPG element where you get something new for your vehicle, but you would need that to complete the game. Also, the enemy pacing was cool in this game because a lot of games get lazy, and especially around this 8-bit era time in the NES where you kill an enemy and then they just respawn. They made it feel painless. That's what kind of helped the game being able to complete the game, because once you killed enemies, unless you went into an underground area, you came back, they were gone. And your energy, once you got a power up, it stayed on the map for a good amount of time. Well, on the screen, I should say, for a good amount of time. So it played like it did everything right. This game, if I had to complain about anything with this game, and I'm nitpicking, I am really nitpicking here, I'd say maybe you could have got a few more continues. Okay. And then they had strategies for the games as well, like the boss fights. You could cheese some of the bosses, but they weren't impossible. You had that one part where you could throw the grenade. I mean, obviously we all know about that now, but especially one of the famous ones with the frog. I think it's levels 2, 4, 6, and I think 8. Most of the even ones. But anyway, you could actually throw your grenade out and then hit the start button, and it would freeze frame and kill the enemy. So I mean, that was around back in Nintendo Power days. They talked about it, but speedrunners do that a lot because people do speedrun this game because it's perfect for speedrunning. So I mean, this game did everything right. If you never played Blaster Master before, guys, do yourself a service and play this one. I mean, you can still find this one around. I mean, because that's the beautiful thing about this game. While it became a cult classic on its own, it didn't go to the point where it was stupid popular like Mario and then have the stupid price tag on it where you have to track it down. No, you actually could find this game. It was actually pretty cool. So definitely I could talk about this game, forever, because it's just one of the few, well, I won't say few, but one of the well executed games that hit that. Most games are kind of good, but this one in my mind for the NES takes it to that next level, graphically, with the music, the soundtrack, and the story. Yeah, okay, the guy was digging in the backyard, or the frog jumped out and went down this pipe. Okay, yeah, the story's a little ridiculous at the beginning, but who cares about a story, right? The game was just that freaking good. So but let me know in the comments your opinion on the game, if you ever beat this one, because I mean, it can be challenging, but that's another thing. It's not so challenging that it's impossible. It just, once you die a few times, you kind of get the feel of it, and you have to play smart. Okay, you have to reserve. You can't just run and gun. You have to reserve. You have to play a little reserved, and time your jumps and kind of know where the enemies are at. But it's not impossible. It doesn't cheat. I don't feel like the game ever feels unfair. So, but anyway, as always, guys, take care of yourself. Protect your inner peace. God bless you, and catch you next episode. Thanks for watching.